What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to do a full story video. A full story video is when I sit down and take a bunch of videos that tell one overarching story and combine them together into one big video. Now, today's full story video is going to be about, well, Batman Knightsend, the final part of the Nightfall trilogy. Now, this was the moment where you had Bruce Wayne come back to Gotham and realize that John Paul Valley is not the right person to take up the mantle of Batman. But at the same time, Bruce Wayne was out of commission. And so he had to retrain his body to get back into shape to be able to take on John Paul Valley to regain the mantle of the Batman. And so today's full story video is a complete story of Batman doing all those things to get the mantle of the Bat. Now, real quick, before you guys dive into today's full story video, at the very end of my last video for this full story video, I did say that I would do a video over the aftermath storyline for Knightsend. I say, you know what? After reading those issues, I kind of realized we don't need those issues for the full story of Knightsend. So I left those books out. So you're only focusing on the beginning and the end, and that's really it. There is no aftermath storyline in this video. But either way, I do hope you enjoy. Okay, so it's time for us to dive into Knightsend finally. And guys, let me tell y'all, I almost did not do Knightsend at all. And the reason why, because, well, Night Quest. Now, if you're new to DC Comics and you have no idea what I'm talking about, let me explain real quickly. When it came to Nightfall, it was technically a trilogy. You had Nightfall, Night Quest, and Knightsend. Now, when it came to Nightfall, it was all about the idea of Bruce Wayne getting his back broken by Bane. Now, Night Quest was more of John Paul Valley being able to be the new Batman and going out of his way to protect Gotham, but only getting worse as time went by. Now, technically, when it came to Night Quest, you had two different Night Quests. You had Night Quest the Crusade and Night Quest the Search. Now, the Crusade was all about John Paul Valley. The Search was more about Bruce Wayne going around the world to save Sandra Kinsolving and Jack Drake, the father to Tim Drake. And really, for me, Night Quest was just not that great. Like, yes, the Search for me was not that bad. The Crusade, it was just more of, where are you trying to go with this storyline? Like, yes, they did show us over time that John Paul Valley was becoming this darker character, somebody who should not be Batman. But for me, the overall story was just okay. And so really, when it came to Knightsend, I was kind of wondering, should I even cover it? But then I realized, no, we already did Nightfall, Night Quest, so yes, we got to do Knightsend. Now, for you new DC fans out there, Knightsend brings back Bruce Wayne as Batman after having his back broken, but being healed up by Sandra Kinsolving. You see, in Night Quest The Search, we had learned that for Sandra Kinsolving, she had the ability to heal people. She had the healing touch. And so she was able to properly heal up Bruce Wayne. Now, after doing that, you now have Bruce Wayne trying to come back as Batman, but he realized that he's not ready yet, because for that short period of time where he was no longer Batman and you had John Paul being Batman for him, his body is not used to the idea of being Batman. His body forgot what it's like to be Batman, the moves he did to be a great hero. And so it's him right now trying to relearn all the different skills that he had learned in the past to be Batman so that he is able to be Batman once again. And so when it came to the end of Night Quest The Search, or really Night Quest, the whole storyline, you had Bruce Wayne tell Robin that he has to go to somebody who can properly train him, and that would be Lady Shiva. And a matter of fact, we do pick up with Lady Shiva going after a character known as the Armless Master. And here's the reason why. Because for Lady Shiva, her main goal is to prove that she is the best fighter out there. But to be able to do that, she has to go after different people who may or may not be better than her. And so right now, her next target is the Armless Master. Now, before you had these two characters battle against each other, he tells her, if you try to kill me off, if you do kill me off, I'm telling you right now, there were 7 people I had trained over the years. Those people were able to earn the name Master for their own. If you kill me off, they will come after you to get revenge for my death. Because of Shiva, she wants somebody to watch the battle. She tells them, calling your attendant, because I want them to witness me killing you off. And I want her to go tell your old people that I was the one who had killed you off. Now, before you have the two characters battle, we see her put on this mask, this bat mask. And this mask is going to be very important for today's video. But either way, you do have Lady Shiva go out of her way to kill off the Armless Master. But his attendant watched the entire thing. And so, of course, she'll go out of her way to tell his old pupils what happened to their old master, that he was killed off by somebody who wore this bat mask. But now we have to jump back in time. And when we do, we pick up with Bruce Wayne going out of his way to meet up with Lady Shiva. Now, as soon as he does meet up with her, right off the bat, she said, you're different. Something about you is different. And you have Bruce tell her, I'm no longer that man I used to be. I'm no longer the Batman. And so the reason why I came to you is to hopefully learn how to fight once again, so that I am able to be that man I used to be in the past, so that I'm able to retrieve my lost mantle. And so for her, she's kind of wondering, why in the world should she go out of her way to train somebody who's no longer worthy of her time, no longer worthy to be a fighter for her to fight down the road? But you have Bruce say, well, here's the catch. You see, once you're able to train me to get me back up to where I used to be, I'll become that worthy fighter for you again. Somebody that you might fight again down the road to see who is the better fighter. And so just like that, she was down with the idea to train him, because now there's a possibility that she will be able to get him back to where he used to be and then fight him to see who is the better fighter. And so she says, fine, let's train. And so over time, he does get better. But the problem is that once she begins to teach him different moves when it comes to killing people, he has to stop her, because to him, it's more of, whoa, wait a second. I came here to learn how to be a better fighter. I didn't come here to learn how to be a killer. But she says, that right there is your problem, because you're not ready to kill somebody when you need to be ready to kill somebody, because you never know when that time could possibly come. But at the same time, for her, it's an insult. You came out of your way to find me, to waste my time, to train you, to hopefully make you a worthy opponent. And here I am trying to teach you different moves that can help you out there in the field. And you tell me no, because it's the whole idea of killing. She hates him for that right then and there. But she tells him there's other ways to train him. And she tells him, come back 2 days later and she'll have something for him to wear, something to use. And so now we jump forward in time. And when we do, we now pick up after you had Lady Shiva go out of her way to kill the Armless Master. And so now we pick up with her handing Bruce Wayne the bat mask. Now, we do learn here the name of the mask is actually called the Mask of Tengu. It's a symbol of the bat spirit being more exact. But it's her saying, until you are ready to take up your mantle once again, at least wear this mask. And matter of fact, go to this address right here to begin your training. Now, let's not forget that she had just killed off the Armless Master in that mask in front of his attendant. And so as we jump over to the attendant, we see her going out of her way to tell the 7 people who were trained by the Armless Master that their old master was killed off by somebody who wore the mask of Tengu. And so now these 7 different people will go after Bruce Wayne, believing that he was the one who had killed off their master. Now we have to jump over to John Paul Valley. Now, for John Paul Valley, he is the Batman at this point in time in DC Comics. But unfortunately, when we do jump over to him, he's being confronted by the system. Now, we have talked about this before. You see, for the system, it's a program that was put in his mind by his father to make sure that he would be ready to become the next Azrael. Let me explain. You see, for John Paul Valley and his family, they have belonged to the Order of St. Dumas. Now, the Order of St. Dumas broke away from the Templar Knights in the 14th or 15th century, and it began to follow a guy known as St. Dumas. Now, over the years, they always had their avenging angel by their side to go after their different opponents who may have crossed the line with the order. And that avenging angel would always be Azrael. Now, for John Paul Valley, he is the latest Azrael. His father was the previous one. But after his father had died, we had learned that his father had put something in his mind called the system. You see, for the system, it was the whole idea of making sure that John Paul Valley would be ready to become the next Batman. The system would teach him everything about the Order of St. Dumas, but also making sure that he'll be a great fighter as Azrael. But here comes the big catch. As soon as you had the system get activated, Bruce Wayne swooped in and said, actually, how about this? Why don't you go ahead and join the Bat family? And then sooner or later, you might become the next Batman for Gotham City. All those things happened in a short period of time. But the problem was, after John Paul became Batman, he became a whole lot darker, a whole lot more aggressive. The man was crossing lines left and right. And so with all that happening, he was then confronted by the system, where he was now being confronted by the spirits of St. Dumas and also his father as well. Now, his father, that spirit got locked away, but right now it's him talking to St. Dumas, who's saying, you are a failure. Like, you failed as Azrael, and then you ran over the Batman or Bruce Wayne and became the next protector of Gotham City. And I told you to become the next protector, but now I'm telling you, you're also a failure in that as well. And so for John Paul, he's wondering, why in the world is the spirit calling me a failure? But now we have to transition back over to Bruce Wayne. Now, when we do, it's really more of Bruce Wayne going back over to the temple that had belonged to the Armless Master. But here's the problem. You see, for Bruce, he has no idea that technically he's being set up. When he walks into the room, he's being confronted by one of the 7 warriors who was trained by the Armless Master. And this warrior, he's very upset with Bruce Wayne. He's all like, oh, look, it's you. It's the guy who's wearing the mask of Tengu, the guy who has supposedly killed off my master. And so I am here to get revenge. And so Bruce Wayne, he realized, okay, yeah, I've been set up, but unfortunately, I don't have a choice here. I have to now go out of my way to fight against this guy. Now, as the fight goes on, is Bruce realizing how much he had forgotten when it comes to knowing how to fight against somebody like this guy right here. He's barely getting by. Now, by the end of the battle, you have Bruce being able to win the battle. But at the same time, Bruce realized that if this guy right here believed that he was the one who had killed off the Armless Master, then the others will then sooner or later come after him. But each one will be better than the previous one, which means for Bruce Wayne, if he has struggled with this one alone, the next one might have the ability to kill him off. But for Bruce Wayne, he's very confident in the idea that he should be able to take them all on and win. But you didn't have Bruce go out of his way to confront Lady Shiva. And when he does, he tells her like, hey, I know that you killed off their master, and now they're coming after me because I'm wearing the mask of Tengu. But it's her saying, yeah, you're right, but I did this for a special reason. And the reason why? To make you better. Because here's the thing, each one will be stronger than the last one. And sooner or later, you're going to have to learn that you're going to have to kill people if you want to survive, to prove that you are worthy. Now, we already know. For Bruce Wayne, there's no way the man going to kill anybody at all. And matter of fact, he tells her that. But once he does tell her that, she does get very upset. But she's kind of hoping that sooner or later he does cross that line to make him worthy enough for her to fight again, to prove that she is a great fighter. Now, Bruce leaves, but you have her go out of her way to kill off the guy that Bruce had just defeated. And the reason why, because to her, he lost. He should be dead. And matter of fact, because he did lose, and because Bruce did not kill him off, that he should have killed himself. But you have her do his work for him. Getting back over to John Paul Valley, you have John Paul Valley still kind of struggling, fighting against the system in his mind, fighting against the spirit of St. Dumas. But while doing that, you didn't have Robin there just taking photos of him. And the reason why, because, well, Bruce told him, I need you to watch John Paul Valley to make sure that he does not cross even more lines when it comes to him being Batman, but to also observe his behavior. And so for Tim Drake, it's just taking photos left and right. But getting back over to John Paul Valley, you have him going after a group of characters called the Gun Runners. Now, for me personally, I don't know why I like the name so much, but for me, kind of cool name of a crew. But either way, for the Gun Runners, you do have John Paul Valley go after them because they're now the newest gang who's trying to cause problems in Gotham City. And with him still being the protector of Gotham, they gotta go. And so you have John Paul going out of his way to beat them down. But once again, we're getting another example of the idea of him just getting more aggressive as Batman, crossing more lines. Now, for John Paul Valley, once he's able to stop the entire gang, he finds this medal. And this medal is very important. And here's the reason why. Because the medal belongs to somebody known as Carlton Leahaw. Now, Carlton Leahaw is very important. And the reason why, because he was somebody who broke away from the Order of St. Dumas, but he was also able to build up his own criminal empire. But also, he was the person who had shot John Paul Valley's father. And so for John Paul Valley, he's kind of like, oh, hold up now. I got to find Leahaw. If he's still around, that means the Gun Runners belong to him, which also means he's somewhere out there and I have to stop him. But getting back over to Bruce, you have Bruce right now just out there trying his best to train, trying his best to just get ready for his next opponent. And honestly, he's then confronted by his next opponent, one of the seven masters. Now, for this one, he's supposed to be better than the last one. And honestly, he proves that because for Bruce Wayne, he was barely able to win this battle. And really, for Bruce Wayne, the only reason why he won this battle because he had a rock nearby that he was able to use in the battle to take this guy down. But once again, you have Bruce Wayne not trying to kill anybody at all. Now, when Bruce and him go back to the home of Lady Shiva, they find the dead body of the previous master that Bruce had defeated. And so you have Bruce tell this master, go tell the others about me. Go tell them I am waiting for them. Now, for Bruce, he realized that he has a lot of work to do because that's now 2 battles where he had barely survived. And really, this last one, he only survived because he had a rock nearby. Now, the first chapter of Knightsend really does end with Bruce Wayne kind of like having a flashback to his first night being Batman, when he had taking that leap off a building. But for him, it was more of a leap into the abyss. And he realized that he's not ready to step in back into that role of Batman because he's not ready to take that leap back into the abyss once again, like he did on his first night being Batman. And so it's him saying he will continue to train until he is officially ready to become the Batman once again. Now, for the sake of time for our coverage over Knightsend, I'm going to go ahead and cover the second chapter of this event. And so the second chapter does take place in Shadow of the Bat, issue number 29. Now, we do pick up with Bruce Wayne still trying to train, trying his best to get his body back into shape once again. But while doing that, we learn that he's currently on the battlegrounds for his next battle against the next master that he has to defeat. And so while out there and we see him cutting some wood, he sees a hawk fly by. Now for him, he believes the hawk has some kind of connection to his next opponent. And so you have Bruce go into hiding to only find out that his next opponent is not there at all. It's just Bruce right now trying his best to be prepared for anything. But that hawk, it does continue to fly back into the city of Gotham City. But while doing that, it does catch a bat. And when it does that, you have Bruce Wayne's next opponent see it. And so for his next opponent, he believes with the hawk being able to catch that bat, it must be a sign of a good omen that he should be able to defeat Bruce Wayne. But while you have Bruce Wayne doing that, we then jump over to John Paul Valley. Now for John Paul, he's once again being confronted by the Order of St. Dumas, the Spirit of St. Dumas, who's once again calling him a failure. But this time you have St. Dumas telling John Paul why he is a failure. It's him saying, you were supposed to be the one to stop Carlston, this person who had killed off other members of the Order of St. Dumas. But instead of doing that, you ran away. And with you running away, you ran over to a different role, the protector of Batman. But here you are now, failing in that part as well too. And so for John Paul, he's crying out. He's like, dude, this is not easy. I'm trying my best. But St. Dumas is continuing to just beat down on John Paul Valley. Now for John Paul, he believes it has to be some kind of trick being done by Bruce Wayne so that sooner or later Bruce will be able to retake the mantle of Batman. And so for John Paul, he's once again motivated to be Batman, but to also find Carlston. But for Robin, you have Robin trying his best to figure out what was that metal that John Paul Valley had picked up earlier. Now, we already know it belongs to the Order of St. Dumas. But for Robin, he doesn't know that. Now, guys, I feel old here because you have Robin sent a fax over to Bruce Wayne's apartment. A fax. I'm sitting here kind of like, man, I feel old. But you know what's wild? Fax machines are still around. Matter of fact, guys, go to a nearby FedEx. You might find one there. Either way, for Robin, it's him hoping to get some answers on the metal that John Paul Valley had found earlier. So once you have Robin arrive at the apartment of Bruce Wayne, you have Bruce tell Robin like, yeah, man, that metal belongs to one person only, and that will be Carlton. Now, for Robin, he wants to know more about the metal, but you have Bruce say, before we are able to talk more about it, we have to wait for one more person to arrive. And he is talking about Dick Grayson. Nightwing has arrived. And really, it's more Bruce Wayne being able to catch up Nightwing of what's happening in Gotham City with Azrael and him being the new Batman, but also him being from the Order of St. Dumas. And so once you have Nightwing and also Robin come to a full understanding, it's all like, hey, do we all agree to work together? They say yes. Bruce says yes, and their main goal is to find a way to bring down John Paul Valley. And speaking of John Paul Valley, he's out there again as Batman, but his main goal is to use the gun runners to find Carlston. And so you have John Paul call up a guy known as Rudy, and Rudy might be able to help John Paul find the person that he is looking for. But while you have John Paul doing that, we jump back over to Dick Grayson and also Tim Drake. Now for Bruce, he told them, like, your job right now is to just watch over John Paul Valley to make sure he does not cross any more lines at all, but also see what he is up to. And so for Dick and also Tim, their job is that, but of course they see some bad guys that need a good beating. So you have the two characters being able to do that, but it's also kind of building up the bond between those two characters right there because by this point in time in DC Comics, Jason was still dead and there was no Damian yet. And so it's kind of like these two beginning that brother relationship. But as we transition back over to John Paul Valley, you have John Paul go out of his way to find this Rudy guy because he believes Rudy, who's part of the gun runners, might be able to get him over to Carlton. But you have Rudy say, dude, I have not seen Carlton in many months. I have no idea what you are talking about. Now, for John Paul Valley, he does not believe the guy at all. But while you have John Paul trying to get that information out of him, he doesn't realize that, well, a few other members of the Gun Riders are able to come from behind and get the jump on him. And so now it's our new Batman here struggling to fight against a few members of the Gun Runners. But while you have John Paul Valley struggling with those guys, as we jump back over to Bruce Wayne, well, now he's struggling to fight against his next opponent because once you have Bruce go back to the battlegrounds, he's then confronted by the next of the seven masters. And we see Bruce trying his best to just continue to fight against this person. But this person has set up different traps to throw Bruce Wayne off. And Bruce right now is saying that it took him a lifetime to become the man he was when he was Batman. But now he's trying to do all that training in a short period of time. But the problem is, can his body go back to where it used to be? But on top of that, is also him wondering, maybe my glory days are just officially gone. But he's trying his best to hang on still. But can I say, I love what the book is trying to achieve here. You know, it's showing us both John Paul Valley and Bruce Wayne both struggling to continue on. But now you're going to have both men being able to overcome their situation because as you jump back over to John Paul Valley, we're now seeing him be able to take on the gun runners, being able to go toe to toe with them and actually trying to stop them, but also get his hands on Rudy so that he can get the information that he was looking for. But when we jump over to Bruce Wayne, we're seeing Bruce beginning to be able to overcome his opponent. But it's now Bruce kind of realizing that maybe, just maybe, this is the kind of training he needs. So maybe technically what Lady Shiva done for him was the right thing because now he is able to have a real opponent, a real fight. His life is on the line. And so with all that being so real, he knows he has to overcome this challenge and being able to defeat his opponent, which he's able to do luckily in this storyline. So that is why I kind of like how the story is being told to us. You have both men being able to at first struggle, but then being able to overcome their challenge. Now, as we jump back over to John Paul Valley, we're seeing him being able to get his hands on Rudy, hoping to get information out of him. But unfortunately, Rudy doesn't know anything about Carlston at all. But for John Paul Valley, it's still great to have Rudy around because he can spread Batman's name around to other criminals in the city. And so to close on today's video, as we get back over to Bruce Wayne, you have Bruce being able to defeat his opponent. And so now Bruce has defeated at least 3 of the 7 masters, but there's still 4 more going to come after him down the road in this storyline. And so for Bruce, he loves the idea of kind of going up against these opponents. Now for Bruce, he's kind of hoping that he'll get back to the point where he wants to be very quickly, but at the same time, he knows that it might still take a while before he's able to get back to that point. Okay, so it's time for us to continue our coverage over Batman Knightsend. And we do pick up with part 3 and part 4 of this storyline. And with that being said, we're still seeing Bruce Wayne trying his best to get back into that position where he should be able to take down John Paul Valley and be able to take up the mantle of Batman once again. But before we do dive into today's storyline properly, I kind of want to sit down and briefly briefly explain what Knightsend is all about, just in case we do have some new people following along with us when it comes to our coverage over Knightsend. You see, Knightsend was the final part of the trilogy for Nightfall. As we all know, Nightfall was the first part of the trilogy, where you have Bane going out of his way to break the back of the Bat. It was a huge moment in Batman comics, a classic moment, but that was Nightfall. And so after that, you did have DC give us Night Quest. Now, Night Quest was honestly not that great, but it was still a cool idea to see John Paul Valley be Batman for a period of time. Now, when it came to Night Quest, it was also broken up into two separate storylines. You had Night Quest The Crusade and Night Quest The Search. Now, The Crusade was really more the idea of us following John Paul Valley adventures of being Batman, while The Search was more of Bruce Wayne going out of his way to find Jack Drake, but to also find Sandra Kinsolving, but to also find a way to cure his back. Really, that last one was done on accident, but a good thing it did happen because it began the process of bringing Bruce Wayne back into the mantle of Batman. And all that led into Knightsend. And Knightsend is really more right now in the early parts of our coverage over this part of Nightfall. Is really more of Batman trying to regain the mantle of Batman, because for that period of time where he was not Batman, his body forgot how to move like he did when he was Batman. He's trying to get back to that point where he was a great fighter and being able to go toe to toe with almost any opponent who tries to fight against him. And so right now, John Paul Valley is still Batman, but it's Bruce Wayne saying, over time, sooner or later, I should be able to get the mantle back from you. And really, he needs to, because by this point in our coverage over Nightfall, is really more of John Paul Valley now being that aggressive Batman now. He's out there killing people, hurting people. And so right now, it's Bruce saying, I need to hurry up and retrain my body so that I will then be able to go after John Paul Valley and hopefully stop him. And so that kind of led into him calling up Lady Shiva as a way to help train him to get back into that shape that he wants to be in. But now we are able to dive into the opening pages of part 3 of Knightsend. And we do pick up with Detective Comics issue number 676. Now, we pick up with Dick Grayson and Tim Drake, Nightwing and Robin, because in our last video, we had saw Bruce Wayne told them, like, your goal right now while I am gone trying to get my body back into shape is to watch over John Paul Valley, to kind of observe him and to see how far he is possibly slipping in his mind. And so you have the two characters being able to break into the Bat Cave. Now, this is really important because in the early parts of Night's Quest, really at the end of Nightfall and beginning of Night Quest, when you had John Paul become Batman, he began to kind of block off the different paths of the Batcave as a way to keep Tim Drake out, really anybody out. But luckily for Tim Drake, he found another way into the Batcave. And so their main goal is to set up cameras as a way to watch John Paul Valley to get more information about him. Now, they do believe that he is gone, but then out of nowhere, they see somebody coming out of the shadows, and they believe it is John Paul Valley returning to the Batcave. But it's not John Paul Valley. You see, John Paul Valley is not at the Batcave. He's out there going after different gunners. Now, gunners are a new type of gang in Gotham City who might be working for a character known as Carlton Leha. Now, Leha was the person who had killed off John Paul Valley's father. And so right now, it's John Paul trying his best to find Leha, because in our last video, he had found a medallion that had belonged to Leha. And that tells John Paul Valley that sooner or later, Carlton might try to come after John Paul Valley to bring him down, just like he did when he came to John Paul's father. And so we see John Paul just being this brutal Batman once again, going after different members of the Gunners to hopefully find somebody who might have information on where in the world Leha could possibly be at. Except while you have John Paul Valley trying to interrogate one of the members of this certain group of people, he's then confronted by Saint Dumas. Really, he's being confronted by the system that was implanted in his mind. And I know you guys are most likely tired of me like re-explaining the whole idea of the Order of Saint Dumas in the system, but just in case we do have some new people following along with us, I want to make sure they fully understand what in the world is going on when it comes to John Paul Valley. You see, we had learned that for John Paul Valley, his father belonged to the Order of St. Dumas. Now, the Order of St. Dumas was a group of people who broke away from the Knights of Templar back in the 14th and 15th century, one of those centuries. Either way, when they broke away, they began to follow a guy known as St. Dumas, and they were able to build an order after him. Now, fast forward, when it came to John Paul Valley's father, he was part of the Order of St. Dumas as Azrael. You see, Azrael is a title given to you by the Order of St. Dumas. You are their avenging angel. Anytime somebody crosses a line with the order, they sent out their avenging angel, Azrael. And when it came to Carlton Lee Hall, he was their latest target, and they had sent out John Paul Valley's father. Unfortunately, he got shot and had to go back home before he died to tell his son that he's next in line to become Azrael. And that was when we learned that for John Paul Valley's father, he had placed in John Paul Valley the system. Now, the system was supposed to be used as a way to teach John Paul everything about the order, but also like his role as Azrael, but also some like fighting moves, make sure that he'll be somewhat ready to become the next Azrael for the Order of St. Dumas. Now, at the very last second, you have Bruce Wayne kind of swoop in and say, hey, don't become Azrael. Join the Bat family, and like maybe sooner or later you'll become the next Batman, which he did in Nightfall and Night Quest. But either way, when it comes to John Paul Valley, because he has a system in his mind, he is constantly being confronted by, well, Saint Dumas. And so right now, the spirit of Saint Dumas from the system is constantly calling John Paul Valley a failure. Like you failed as Azrael, and because you have failed as Azrael, you ran over and became the next Batman, the protector of Gotham City, but you're also failing in that as well. And so for John Paul Valley, he's been trying to ignore St. Dumas, who just keeps reappearing and calling him a failure, but unfortunately, he can't. It's like constantly playing over and over in his head. But now we can go ahead and like jump back over to Dick Grayson and also Tim Drake. Now, when we do, it's really more of the two characters now being confronted by Harold. Now, when it comes to Harold, he was this hunchback who was also mute, but he was an engineer who worked for Bruce Wayne and Tim Drake in the Batcave. Now, for Harold, Homeboy disappeared in the early parts of Nightfall. No one knew where in the world the guy went to. Well, kind of find out, the dude found a hidden part in the Batcave. It has been there the entire time. So it's like, okay, you know what? I kind of got this feeling that Bruce Wayne is coming back very soon as Batman. So let me go ahead and just pop back out once again. Now, when it comes to Harold, he does show both Dick and Tim what John Paul has been using as a way to get around Gotham at a very fast pace. And of course, we get reminded that for John Paul Valley, he has this Batmobile that has the ability to ride the subway tracks to get around very quickly in Gotham. Now, for Dick Grayson, he's kind of worried because this place was his home for many years. But right now, it does not seem like his home. And so he's kind of hoping that maybe Bruce Wayne can get the mantle back and turn his place back into his home once again. Now we're able to jump over to Bruce Wayne, and when we do, it's really more of Bruce Wayne kind of wondering if he is ready to jump back into the abyss. Now the abyss is really more of him becoming Batman once again, kind of taking up that dark mantle of a hero. And so every single night, ever since the beginning of Night's End, you have Bruce Wayne just standing over Gotham City and wondering if he's ready to jump into the abyss like he did the first night he became Batman. And to him, he's not ready at all yet. And so, unfortunately, he must continue to train. With all that going on, we can then jump over to John Paul Valley. Now, for John Paul, the dude's still trying to hunt down Lee Haw. So he was able to grab one of the guys earlier to kind of interrogate him to hopefully figure out where he is at, Lee Haw is at. Now, this guy, he said, listen, I had no idea what his name was, but this guy did sell the guns to me. Now, there was a middleman that was able to set up the meeting, and that would be Candy. If you find Candy, then most likely you should find Lee Haw. And so just like that, you had John Paul leave to hopefully find this Candy person. Now, I kind of want to jump back over to Bruce Wayne to explain more about his training with Lady Shiva because earlier all I said was he's being trained by her, and that's really it. So for Bruce Wayne, his whole idea of training is going up against different people who want to kill him. Let me explain. You see, for Lady Shiva, when she was confronted by Bruce Wayne, when he asked her to train him, she thought it was an insult because she only trains people who can become a worthy opponent for her to fight against and most likely kill. And so when she saw Bruce Wayne learn that Bruce is no longer the Batman, he was no longer a worthy opponent. Now, for Bruce Wayne, he tells her, if you go out of your way to train me, then sooner or later, I'll become that worthy opponent for you again. And so she's kind of like, okay, let's train. Now, here comes the big problem. She wanted Bruce to become a killer because sooner or later, you're going to have to cross that line to kill somebody if you want to survive. But for Bruce, it's a huge no-no. Like, hey, I ain't killing nobody. Now, what she did was she killed off somebody known as the Armless Master. Now, the Armless Master, he has 7 pupils who have became their own masters themselves. The problem is that when they had heard that their master was killed off, they're kind of like, okay, you know what? We have to get revenge against the person who killed off our old master. Now, for Lady Shiva, she wore the mask of Tengu, but she had given Bruce that mask. And so right now, those 7 new masters, they believe that Bruce Wayne was the one who had killed off their master. But in reality, he didn't do anything. Now, for Bruce, he's very upset about the idea of what's happening to him, but at the same time, he realized that this is a perfect kind of training. And the reason why I'm bringing that up right now because for Bruce Wayne, he's being confronted by some ninjas who work for one of the 7 masters who are trying to come after him. And so once you have Bruce being able to fight against those guys, he's then confronted by his next opponent, one of the 7 masters. Now, this battle is very short lived because once you have Bruce Wayne being able to take down this guy, but just barely once again, he's then confronted by the next of the 7 masters just like that. But once again, this battle is also short lived. And the reason why, because when it comes to this master, she has this chain that she's trying to use as a way to attack Bruce Wayne. The problem is that when she does jump into the air with her chain unfortunately wraps around a rear view mirror of a truck and pulls her away to instantly knock her out. So for Bruce Wayne, he got very lucky because she could have easily defeated him. But while all of that was going on, for John Paul Valley, he was trying his best to hunt down Lee Haw. And so when it came to that Candy person, he told John Paul there's somebody who might be able to help you find Lee Haw. And so you had Candy and John Paul go over to a pit house. Unfortunately, when they find that guy, he's been killed off. Somebody had used a piano wire as a way to kill him off. Now, for John Paul, he truly believes that it was, of course, Lee Haw. Lee Haw came back from the dead and right now trying to come after him. And so for John Paul, he's hoping that sooner or later he should be able to find Lee Haw and finally get rid of him. But once you have Jean Paul get back over to the Batcave, he's once again confronted by Saint Dumas. Now, Saint Dumas is trying to tell Jean Paul that he's completely wrong when it comes to the medallion. You see, for Saint Dumas, he's telling Jean Paul, what you found earlier does not belong to Leha. Leha had so many followers out there that most likely the medallion that you have found earlier belonged to one of his followers. Now, for Jean Paul, he's not trying to listen, but at the same time, he hates the idea of Saint Dumas still kind of calling him a failure. And so right now, it's Jean Paul saying, I'm going to show you, I'm going to show everybody that I am not a failure, that I am somebody special. And so it's him screaming out loud in the Batcave. But let's not forget that Dick Grayson and Tim Drake, they had set up cameras in the Batcave to watch Jean Paul Valley. And so what they're seeing is seeing a man just going crazy. And they're kind of wondering, who in the world is he talking to? And so as we dive into the next chapter for Knightsend, we jump over to Legends of the Dark Knight, issue number 62. Now, with this issue alone, it's really more just kind of reminding us what we had literally just saw at the ending of the last issue. The whole idea of Jean Paul Valley being told by Saint Dumas that he is completely wrong about Leha being behind everything going on in Gotham City. That basically he is a failure. And so you have Jean Paul once again saying like, I'm going to prove I'm a great warrior of the Saint Dumas. I'm going to prove I'm a great protector of Gotham City. But while saying all those things, he's once again being observed by Robin and also Dick Grayson. And really, it's more Dick Grayson realizing that Bruce Wayne got a lot of work to do when it comes to bringing down Jean Paul Valley. And speaking of Bruce Wayne, he's still going on with his crazy training fighting against the seven masters who are coming after him. And so now it's time for Bruce Wayne to be confronted by the next one. And so, of course, like we saw in the last chapter, you have Bruce Wayne be confronted by all these different ninjas who work for the next master that Bruce is going to fight against. And so once you have Bruce being able to take down all these different ninjas very easily, he's then confronted by their master. Now, their master is already kind of reminding Bruce Wayne of Bane because, again, Bane was the one who had technically ended the career of Batman temporarily at the end of Nightfall. And so seeing somebody who kind of resembles Bane in different ways is Bruce kind of wondering in the possibility if this man will end his career like Bane did in Nightfall. Let's check in on Jean Paul Valley. And the reason why, because you have Jean Paul go over to Candy once again. And apparently Candy thought he had a good place to hide from Jean Paul. But unfortunately, Jean Paul knew where to go to find Candy after beating down some thugs who knew about Candy's hideout. Either way, you have Candy tell Jean Paul where he can find this gun runner who's most likely Leha just hiding out in Gotham City. And so for Jean Paul, he goes over to the docks. And of course, he does find some thugs there working for the gun runner, the man in charge of the entire operation. And so once you have Jean Paul Valley being able to take down a few thugs, he is then confronted by a helicopter that's trying to, well, shoot him down. And so while you have Jean Paul dealing with that, the story goes back over to Bruce Wayne. You're going to see the story for this chapter alone kind of go back and forth between Jean Paul and Batman. And really, when it comes to most of the issues of this storyline, it does that a lot where we jump back and forth between Batman and Jean Paul to kind of do some small comparison between the two characters. But either way, for Bruce Wayne, he is really struggling when it comes to fighting against his latest opponent. This opponent is really giving him a hard time when it comes to being able to win the battle. And like I said earlier, for Batman, this guy kind of resembles Bane in different types of ways. And so it does seem like most likely Bruce might lose this battle. And really, while you have Bruce going through his struggles in his battle, Jean Paul is about to get his struggles in his battle by going up against someone who's wearing a powered armor suit. And no, this is not Carlton Leha at all. It's just somebody else wearing a power suit getting ready to fight against John Paul Valley. And this leads into really both characters kind of getting to that point where it does seem like they have no choice but to go ahead and kill off their opponent. Now, for Bruce Wayne, I'm going to save him and his battle for the very end of this video, but I kind of want to focus more on John Paul Valley because you have John Paul Valley fight against this guy in his power armor suit. They go back and forth for a good while, but you didn't have John Paul being able to win his battle. Now, the guy does fall on top of a bunch of grenades, and you have John Paul just say, hey, you know what? Let me go ahead and blow up all those grenades that can most likely kill you all. So there he goes. And so with him killing off his opponent, we can jump over to Bruce Wayne. And really, for Bruce Wayne, he kind of realized that to get out of this training that Lady Shiva had technically set up for him is to be a killer. That's the whole idea of Shiva's training, because she realized that sooner or later Bruce is gonna fall. And the reason why, because he is not able to kill anybody. And so this is her going out of her way, sending off these different people to hopefully teach Bruce to kill somebody. And so for Bruce, he says, okay, you know what? There's only one way out of this. I have to become a killer. And so he does the same move that Shiva had taught him at the very beginning of the storyline. So it does seem like Bruce had just killed somebody. But once Bruce had supposedly killed off that person, he's then confronted by Tim Drake and Dick Grayson. And so in their eyes, it does look like Bruce had just killed somebody. And this Okay, so it's time for us to get back into our coverage over Knightsend. Now, guys, for me personally, I kind of love Knightsend better than I like Nightfall and Night Quest, especially Night Quest. I don't hate Night Quest, but it wasn't as great as the other two. And really, Knightsend for me, even though we're only halfway through the coverage of Knightsend, is way better than Night Quest and also Nightfall. Now, with that being said, when it comes to our coverage over DC, just in case we do have anybody who's kind of new to comics, I kind of want to explain once again what is Knightsend all about. You see, for a lot of fans out there, Nightfall is just one big storyline and that's really it. But in reality, Nightfall is actually a trilogy. Now, hear how it goes. Nightfall is a storyline where you have Bane going out of his way to break the back of the Bat. It was one heck of a storyline. Now, Night Quest was technically two different storylines. You had Night Quest, The Crusade, and Night Quest, The Search. Now, Night Quest, The Crusade was really more of us seeing John Paul Valley being Batman and kind of seeing him go down a dark road. Now, for Night Quest, The Search, it was really more of Bruce Wayne going out of his way to find two characters, Sandra Kinsolving and Jack Drake. Now, by the end of that storyline, Bruce Wayne was able to get his back healed, but then when he got back to Gotham, he realized how bad things have gotten when it comes to John Paul being Batman. And so that led into Knightsend, where you have Bruce Wayne currently training to kind of get ready to go up against John Paul Valley to hopefully take him down and to finally take back the mantle of the Batman. Now, for Bruce Wayne, it was a whole idea of he knowing that he's not technically ready to go up against John Paul Valley just yet. And so you have Bruce Wayne find Lady Shiva. Now, for Lady Shiva, at first, she did not want to train Bruce Wayne at all because the whole idea of he's not a worthy opponent. But you have Bruce Wayne being able to convince her to train him because one day he will be a worthy opponent. But after a while, she kind of realized that Bruce Wayne will not do the one thing that she wants him to do, which is to kill. And so she realized the best way to make somebody become a killer is kind of put them in a hard position. And so what she did was she killed off a man known as the Armless Master. Now, the Armless Master has trained 7 people in the past who had also became masters as well. But once they had heard that somebody had killed off their old master, they wanted revenge against that person. Now, technically, it was Lady Shiva, but what she did was she was wearing the mask of Tengu, the Bat mask, and she gave that mask over to Bruce Wayne. And so for all those people who are very upset about the idea of their dead old master, they believe that Bruce Wayne was the one who had killed off their master, not knowing that technically it was Lady Shiva. Now, her goal is to get him in a position where he has to kill off one of those people who is coming after him. Now, Bruce Wayne knows what she is doing, but for Bruce Wayne, he won't kill. But on top of that, it's also Bruce saying, like, I'm going out of my way to fight against these guys as a way to get myself back in that position to be able to take down John Paul Valley sooner or later. And really, it kind of leads us into the opening pages for today's storyline. And really, we're picking up where our last video had left off at, because at the end of our last video, you have Bruce Wayne fighting against one of those people who were coming after him because he was wearing the mask of Tengu. And so because their battle got so crazy and wild, it kind of seemed like Bruce had no choice but to go ahead and use the skill or use the move that Lady Shiva had shown him to kill off his opponent. And so it kind of did seem like Bruce Wayne had just killed somebody. It also seemed like Bruce Wayne did not care at all. And the reason why I'm saying that, because right after he had killed somebody, Robin and Nightwing appeared. Now remember, this is Tim Drake Robin. But either way, when they did appear, they were kind of like, oh my God, Bruce Wayne, you had killed somebody. What in the world is wrong with you? Now, it kind of seemed like Bruce Wayne did not care at all, because to him it's all like, I had no choice. I had to cross that line. Now, why you have Bruce kind of acting like he's a completely different person, and also seems like sooner or later Bruce might go out of his way to kill off John Paul Valley, you also have Nightwing express how mad he is at Bruce Wayne, because he's been by Bruce's side the longest out of him and Tim. And so for Dick, it's more of like, you have stand up for a lot of different things. And here you are right now, just throwing all of that away to become Batman again. You make me sick. Now, you do have Lady Shiva appear. And for her, it kind of seems like she's very happy about the idea that Bruce did go out of his way to kill somebody, because now in her eyes, he's now a worthy opponent, which means sooner or later, these two characters are going to fight against each other. And in her mind, one of them is going to die. Now, she does take away the mask of Tengu. Here's the reason why, because we do learn that she had put some kind of device in the mask to help those people who were mad at the person wearing the mask of Tengu find that person, some kind of locator. And so with her being able to take the mask away, those people will no longer go after Bruce Wayne. They'll now go after her instead. And so for her, his training is done, because again, he had killed somebody. But once you have Lady Shiva leave, you then have Bruce tell Dick and also Tim that he did not kill this person at all. Instead, what he did was he used the move that he learned by Lady Shiva to make it seem like he did kill that person off, but in reality, that person is completely alive. But either way, it was Bruce saying, even though she did kill off the Armless Master and then sent off those people to come after me, I used those people up to a point where I believed that I was officially ready to come out there as Batman. But the problem is, though, I could not go be Batman with these people still trying to chase me down. And so I had to kill off somebody in front of her eyes to stop them from coming after me, so that now I can focus on just being Batman and go after John Paul Valley. But now we have to jump over to John Paul Valley. Now, this is also picking up where our last video had left off at. You see, for John Paul Valley, he has gone a tad bit crazy. You see, to him, he had found a medallion that belonged to somebody known as Carlton Leha. Now, Carlton Leha was the person who had killed off the previous Azrael. Of course, that would be John Paul Valley's father. And so for him, finding out that Carlton is still alive is a huge problem. This dude wants the guy dead so badly. And so he's going out of his way to attack a group called the Gunners to hopefully find out where in the world Carlton Leha could possibly be yet. But at the end of our last video, you had John Paul Valley go over to the docks where he found some more gunners. Now, in the middle of his battle there, he ran into somebody who had a power suit. And with that power suit, tried to bring down John Paul Valley. Now, this was where John Paul had truly crossed the line, because you had John Paul kind of push that person on top of a bunch of grenades. They all went off and there was a huge explosion. Now, John Paul got away. The guy in the power suit, he is alive, but just barely, like literally barely. But it kind of shows that John Paul does not care. Right now, his main goal is to find Carlton, and he does not care who stands in his way. But with John Paul Valley going out of his way to blow up the docks in that area, he's also ruining the business for a completely different person. You see, for John Paul Valley, he believed those guys was working for, well, Carlton Leha. But in reality, they're working for somebody else, a guy known as Selkirk. Now, Selkirk is the owner of all those weapons, the power suit, and the gunners as well. And so with John Paul blowing up the docks in that area, it hurt Selkirk's business. And right now, his investors are very upset about the idea that their money had just basically been lost, because for Selkirk, he had now lost a huge amount of business. And so now it's him saying, you know what? Batman must be dealt with now. Now, getting back over to Lady Shiva, you kind of have her go after some ninjas who worked for the next person, the next master, who would have gone after the Mask of Tengu person to get revenge for their master. And so for these random ninjas, they're then confronted by Lady Shiva. And she said, I want you guys to carry a message to your master that basically the game is over. You guys will no longer come after me or anybody else who wears the Mask of Tengu. And she leaves the mask behind to kind of show him that the game is officially done. But as we get over to Bruce Wayne, you have Bruce Wayne go to that edge once again, where we saw him in the last few videos, whereas Bruce Wayne kind of wondering if he was ready to jump back into the abyss of being Batman, that darkness around him. But with him taking down that last person, is him now saying, I am now officially ready to jump back into the abyss once again. It's Bruce Wayne saying, I am now ready to become the Batman once again. And so with him kind of now being ready, we pick up with Dick Grayson and also Robin. Now, for this one page alone, it really shows how much confidence Dick Grayson has in Bruce Wayne. And honestly, it makes a lot of sense. Like, yes, Dick and Bruce may have a falling out, but the thing is, Dick knows the best Batman is Bruce Wayne. Like, no matter what, nobody will be able to become the next Batman. Yes, he might get replaced by somebody down the road, but that person will never be as good as Bruce Wayne. Now for Tim, he can't believe what he's hearing. Like, yes, he loves hearing Dick saying all these great things, but is Tim kind of worried that maybe, just maybe, Bruce is not ready or good enough to take down John Paul Valley. Now, we also do pick up with Jim Gordon. Now, really, Jim Gordon had kind of taken the back seat when it came to the end of Night Quest. And so for Knightsend, we didn't really see him at all so far when it came to the storyline of Knightsend up until this moment, where it's him kind of getting all these different reports about what's happening out there in Gotham City. But it's also kind of showing that he's no longer trying to be involved in the Batman stuff, but if he has to, it's more of all like sooner or later, I might have to go ahead and take down the Batman. Now, of course, he has no idea that the other Batman has returned, but for Jim Gordon, he can tell that there is a different Batman out there, not the one he used to work with. Now, I kind of love the ending for this issue alone. And the reason why, because while you have Bane inside his prison, he begins to kind of go crazy. Like he's being attacked by all these different bats, but it's also kind of Bane realizing the Batman has returned. He has returned. And so when we jump back over to Dick Grayson and also Tim Drake, it's them welcoming Bruce Wayne back as the Batman. Like he is officially back in the role, and now it's time for us to get into that big battle between John Paul Valley and Batman. But unfortunately, before we were able to kind of dive into that battle between John Paul Valley and Batman, we have to jump over to Catwoman issue number 12. Now, the opening pages of that issue does pick up where the last chapter had left off at, where is Bruce Wayne now being Batman once again. And honestly, is Bruce Wayne kind of showing us that he's ready to jump back into that abyss, to be the Batman once again. And so for him, he had won one war, the war of his identity. But now it's time for a different war, the war for Gotham, to bring down John Paul Valley. And so his goal is to find him now. But now we can jump over to Selina Kyle. Now, when we do, it's Selina Kyle interrogating somebody who works for Selkirk. Now, with this section alone, it's really more of Selina Kyle kind of showing us that she has some kind of interest in Selkirk. Now, we have no idea what that interest is, but in reality, it does show us that she wants to find him really badly. So while interrogating this guy, he does confirm that he does work for Selkirk, but then she's attacked by some guys with guns who came for him. Now, for Selina Kyle, these guys with guns are very easily to take out. But after doing that, she is then knocked out by somebody wearing another power suit. But also you have Selkirk appear as well, kind of wondering why in the world Selina Kyle was trying to look for him. And so he tells his guys, go ahead and grab her, bring her with her because I want to know why she was trying to come after me for. Now, this is where things go kind of south here, guys, because we now pick up with Selkirk and his crew arriving at the building that he is currently staying in. Now, while being there, he tells his guys to go ahead and take her upstairs. He'll be there in a moment because right now he has to deal with some other business on the phone with one of his customers. Now, here's the thing. Selina was knocked out earlier, right? But she did wake up, but continued to pretend to be knocked out, waiting for the right time to make a move. And so once she had a few guys take her inside the elevator, she woke up and began to take out those guys who were trying to transport her upstairs to a different room. Now, while she was doing that, you have Batman appear, or really John Paul Batman. Now for John Paul, he's on a mission. His main goal is to get to Selkirk because he believes that Selkirk can most likely lead him over to where Carlton Lee Hall is at. And so now it's just John Paul Valley going on a rampage. And he does not care if he's killing folks at all to get over to his target. His main target right now is Selkirk, and Selkirk is trying his best to just get away, and so he takes a different elevator going up to his helicopter. But while all of that is happening, for Selina Kyle, we do learn now why she is trying to come after Selkirk for. You see, for Selina, she heard that he has some device that could give somebody the ability to walk again. And right now, one of her close allies has basically lost that ability and she wants to help that friend out. And so it's her right now just trying to fight her way over to his safe. But on top of that, she now wants a piece of Selkirk as well, because she wants to know what he would done to her when it came to him trying to interrogate her. But for John Paul Valley, he's also trying his best to hunt down Selkirk as well. And this dude, once again, does not care if anybody is being killed off when it comes to him trying to reach his target. He's just going on one heck of a rampage. Now for Selkirk, he sees Batman or John Paul Batman coming. He's trying his best to get away. But while trying to do that, he's then cut off by Selina Kyle. Now for Selina, it's her saying, perfect. This is the perfect time to try to get information out of you. And so she begins to interrogate him, thinking that she'll get everything she wants out of him. But the problem is that while trying to do that, you have John Paul Valley appear. He grabs her and just throws her away because he wants information out of Selkirk as well. He's kind of like, where is Carlton Lee Hall? Tell me right now. Now for Selkirk, he's kind of like, Carlton's dead. He's been dead for a good while. But for John Paul, he does not believe that at all. And so it does kind of seem like he might go a tad bit too far to get the info that he is looking for. But that is when you have Nightwing, Robin, and also Bruce Wayne Batman appear. And it's kind of like, nah, you are going to leave him alone now. And this leads into the battle between Bruce Wayne and John Paul Valley. This leads into part 7 of the whole idea of Knightsend. It's Batman versus Batman. Like, that right there means a lot for the 1990s Nightfall event. The whole idea of everything finally coming back together. But for John Paul Valley, it's him kind of saying like, Bruce Wayne, you gave up the mantle to me. And so when you did that, that technically means that I'm now Batman and you're technically nobody. Now, at the same time, it's also John Paul saying there is a huge difference between you and I. Because the John Paul Valley is more the idea of Bruce Wayne, when he takes down the bad guy, they still have the ability to get back up again. But for John Paul, when he takes down a bad guy, they ain't getting back up anytime soon or possibly ever again. And so it's him saying what you did for Gotham was not working. Now, for Bruce Wayne, honestly, I kind of felt like he had a good argument here when it came to John Paul tactics. You see, for Bruce Wayne, he knows that when John Paul went after Abattoir and had technically kind of killed him off, unfortunately, a hostage had died. They found the hostage, but of course, he died when they finally found him. And it's Bruce saying, you may believe that your tactics are better than mine, but here comes your big problem. You see, you let an innocent man die because you were too busy dealing with your own problems, but also trying to think that your ideas are better than mine. If you had not killed off Abattoir, then most likely his hostage would have been alive. And so with both of the Batmen now being distracted or fighting against one another, it's a good time for Selkirk to get the heck out of there. But before he tries to leave, he tells his guys to go ahead and try to kill off Selina Kyle because he knows that she is most definitely going to continue to come after him if she stays alive. And so while you have the two Batman fighting, his guy shooting at her and also Robin and Nightwing, you have him trying to escape. Now for Selina, she does chase after him, but for Robin and Nightwing, they go after the different guys who work for Selkirk to hopefully stop them. And so now you have 3 different things going on all at once. But now it's time to get the GCPD involved because you have Jim Gordon going over to the mayor. Now, this is the same mayor who was kind of like, hey, listen, at first I did hate Batman, but then he saved my life. And when he saved my life, I realized that cops should be more like Batman. And so ever since then, him and Jim were never able to see eye to eye with one another. But right now it's Jim saying, listen, this new Batman has gone too far. And with them going too far, I need to bring him in. But while you have the two characters talking to one another, Jim gets that call of what's happening right now in the city with the two Batmen and also Robin, Nightwing, and Catwoman. And so he leaves in a hurry to go see what exactly is going on. But now we have to kind of get into the cliffhanger of the story because while you have Batman fighting against Batman, while you have Selina going after Selkirk, while you have Robin and also Nightwing fighting against Selkirk's guys, you had Selkirk being able to get into his helicopter. Now, his goal is to get the heck out of there, but Selina was able to get on the helicopter as well. But at the same time, you have one of John Paul grapples being able to get a hold of the helicopter, but you have Bruce Wayne holding on to John Paul. So you have all four characters right now in one crazy heck of a helicopter scene, kind of leaving us wonder what could possibly happen to Selina Kyle, Bruce Wayne, John Paul Valley, or possibly Selkirk as well, as the helicopter is now flying around crazy in the middle of Gotham City. But with that being okay, so we're going to go ahead and get back into our coverage over Batman Knightsend. Now, technically, we're almost done, guys. Honestly, after this video right here, we only have one more video to cover, and that would be the Aftermath storyline for the Nightfalls trilogy. But once we're done with Knightsend, we're going to move on to something else when it comes to our DC Comics coverage. But with all that being said, this video does pick up where our last video had left off at, where you have Bruce Wayne trying his best to take away the mantle of Batman away from John Paul Valley, who was Batman for a good period of time in DC Comics. Now, just in case you are new to my channel or new to DC Comics, let me go ahead and just briefly explain what's going on when it comes to Knightsend. Because for some folks out there, Knight's Fall was just one big storyline, and that was truthfully it. They don't know the whole idea that Knight's Fall was really a trilogy. And let me explain. You see, when it came to DC Comics, when they gave us Nightfall's main purpose was to get rid of Bruce Wayne. And so you have Bane come in there, break the bat, and that was Knight's Fall. Now, Night Quest was really more the idea of John Paul Valley now being the new Batman. Now, technically, when it came to Night Quest, you had two different storylines. You had Night Quest the Crusade and Night Quest the Search. Now, the Crusade was really more about John Paul Valley being Batman, but kind of seeing him go down this dark path and beginning to cross some lines as Batman and kind of showing that maybe he's not ready to be the next Batman for Gotham City. Now, when it comes to Night Quest The Search, it was more the idea of Bruce Wayne going out of his way to find two characters, Sandra Kinsolving and also Jack Drake. Now, once those stories kind of wrap up, you also have Bruce Wayne being able to get his back healed up. It all went into Knightsend. And really, Knightsend is the whole idea of Bruce Wayne saying, okay, John Paul has crossed the line. It's now time for me to step in and regain the mantle of Batman. But for Bruce, he kind of realized that he was not really ready to take on John Paul Valley. So the first half of Knightsend was really more of Bruce Wayne trying to train with Lady Shiva to hopefully get back into that position where he should be able to take on John Paul Valley. After a while, he was ready. And that kind of leads us into the point of Knightsend where you now have John Paul Valley trying to fight Bruce Wayne for control of the Batman mantle. Now, this video does pick up where our last video left off at. The whole idea where you had John Paul Valley trying to go after a character known as Selkirk. Now, Selkirk was this crime boss in Gotham City who was just out there trying to sell weapons, and that was really it. But for John Paul Valley, he believed that Selkirk could have major connections to a different character, and that would be Carlton Lee Hall. Now, Carlton Lee Hall was the person who had killed off John Paul Valley's father. And so for John Paul, he believes if he used Selkirk as a way to get to Carlton Lee Hall, he will then be able to get revenge for his father's death. Now, while you had John Paul Valley trying to go after Selkirk, you also had Selina Kyle as well going after Selkirk. Now, for her, it was a completely different reason. And technically, by this point in our coverage over Knightsend, it does not really matter at all. just know that when he came to Selkirk, he had some device that could help someone be able to walk again. And for Selina, she had a friend that needed that device. And so that is why she was going after Selkirk. But while you had the two characters trying to go after Selkirk, you had Bruce Wayne appear. You had Tim Drake Robin and also Nightwing as well appear to try to fight against John Paul Valley. Now, as the fight went on, you had Selkirk try to get away on a helicopter, and you had Selina being able to get inside the helicopter as well. But for John Paul Valley, he shot a grapple that was able to hook itself onto the helicopter that belonged to Selkirk. And you didn't have Batman, Bruce Wayne, grab onto John Paul Valley. So you have both guys just hanging for their lives while you have Selina trying to go out of Selkirk inside the helicopter. And so that leads into the opening pages for today's storyline. And so diving into Shadow of the Bat issue number 30 is really more of us just seeing John Paul and also Bruce Wayne just hanging for their lives, while you have Selina Kyle inside the helicopter going after Selkirk. Now, you have Nightwing and also Robin trying their best to follow where the helicopter goes. Now, we do get a few action scenes in these opening pages, but I kind of want to focus more on what John Paul is saying to Bruce Wayne, because to John Paul, he truly believes by this point he is Batman, that Bruce Wayne is technically an imposter. The role now belongs to him, and that is it, because for John Paul Valley, he has done a better job being Batman than Bruce Wayne has. Now, for our two Batmen, they continue to fight against each other, but after a while, you do have the helicopter crash on a nearby bridge in Gotham City. And so with the helicopter crashing on a bridge in Gotham City, it's now Bruce Wayne Batman, Nightwing, and also Tim Drake Robin trying their best to save anybody's life who could possibly be hurt by any falling debris from the helicopter. Now, for Selina Kyle, it's more of that she fell out of the helicopter, got hit in the head by a falling piece of the helicopter, so she's knocked out. But you do have Bruce Wayne being able to save her life at the very last second before she had fallen to her death. But while trying to save her life, you have John Paul Valley continue the battle between him and Bruce Wayne. Like, this is John Paul saying, no, I need you to die. You do not deserve the role of Batman anymore. Now, for me personally, I was kind of bothered about the idea of Jim Gordon not being really used a lot in Knightsend. And for me, it really did bother me a whole lot more where they would show him for like 2 or 3 panels, and that would be it for the storyline in each of our videos. So for example, is Jim hearing right now what's happening on the bridge in Gotham City? And his goal is to get there in a hurry. But again, he does not play a major role in this storyline. Now, I kind of want to go ahead and jump back over to the battle between Bruce Wayne and also John Paul Valley. Here's the reason why, because while you have the two characters battling against each other, it's really more of John Paul Valley trying to prove that he is Batman by giving us a few more examples of why he believes that he is the better Batman. Like, for example, starting off with the fact that for John Paul Valley, he was the one who had defeated Bane. It wasn't Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne lost to Bane. It was John Paul being able to come back around and take down the guy who had basically broke the bat, which was Bane. And so for John Paul, that right there is a good enough reason to be the Batman. But on top of that is John Paul saying, I am finally combining the two roles in my life into one. The role of Azrael and the role of Batman coming together as one. Now, as the battle continue on, you have the helicopter begin to leak out fuel. Now, that is really important because by the end of the battle, you have John Paul Valley being able to get that edge over Bruce Wayne to the point where it seems like he might drop Bruce to his death. But while holding on to Bruce Wayne, you have fuel leaking all around them. And you have John Paul Valley trying to use his flamethrower to hopefully kill off Bruce Wayne, which of course does light himself on fire and giving Bruce a way to get away from John Paul Valley while John Paul falls into the river, burning alive. Now, for John Paul Valley, he does survive the fall, but also he survives the flames as well. But while he's trying to recover, we get into the point where you're going to have Selena Kyle kind of lead the storyline because again, she was not really a major character in the storyline. They kind of had to use her book at that time to kind of help get Knightsend out there for fans to read at a good amount of time. Now, with that being said, you do have her and Bruce Wayne being able to help Selkirk and his guys get away from the helicopter that was going to blow up. Now, again, for Selena, she was only here for a device that Selkirk had. But once he found out what she wanted, he basically grabbed a device and threw it into the river. So now it's lost forever. But again, she did help Batman be able to get Selkirk and his two guys away from the helicopter before it was blown up. But after doing all of that, you then have Bruce Wayne run over to the Batmobile. Now, for John Paul Valley, he has the vehicle rigged. Unless you know how to get through his security measures, the vehicle is going to blow up. In matter of fact, it happens. The vehicle blows up. And so we're kind of left to believe that Bruce Wayne is dead. And you have Nightwing and Robin freaking out, but now they're being confronted by John Paul Valley. It's up to them, it seems like, to bring down this man. And really, it's more of John Paul Valley going up against Dick Grayson. And I think that's why I really do like Detective Comics issue number 677. And the reason why, because it gives Dick Grayson that time to shine. You know what I mean? Like, for Dick Grayson, he is Nightwing. He should have been the next Batman when Bruce got his back broken. But the problem was Bruce chose John Paul Valley, somebody he only met recently. Now, we also got an excuse, a lame excuse, where Bruce said, hey, Dick Grayson is out there on his own, being his own man. Like, hey, we don't talk as much as we used to. But for me, that's a lame excuse because right here, you're seeing Dick Grayson being that man who's very upset about the idea that Batman could possibly be dead. He wants to take on John Paul Valley by himself. But while you have Dick Grayson doing that, you have Tim Drake Robin going out of his way to help out the innocent people who are still being affected by this big battle going on between the Batmen across all of Gotham City. But really, this chapter alone is really more focusing on Dick Grayson fighting against John Paul Valley Batman. And for me personally, the next section really shows that it's Bruce Wayne realizing that he should have chose Dick Grayson to be the next Batman because you have Bruce Wayne reappear to kind of show us that, yeah, he did survive the explosion from earlier. But either way, it's also Bruce telling Tim, we got to go somewhere else. Now, for Robin, it's more of, hey, why aren't we going out of our way to make sure that Dick survived the battle against John Paul Valley? But it's Bruce saying, I know that Dick will most likely survive against John Paul Valley. But for us, we have to go somewhere else. And for Dick, I know that he knows when is the right moment to step away from a battle. But either way, I have faith that Dick will be okay. Now, you do have the GCPD arrive, and really, they do kind of play a somewhat role after Knightsend when it comes to the relationship between Bruce Wayne and Jim Gordon. But for right now, they don't really play a major role in Knightsend. Now, getting back over to the battle between Dick Grayson and also John Paul Valley, this really shows that Dick Grayson should have been the next Batman. And here's the reason why, because you have Dick Grayson who truly does believe that Bruce Wayne is dead. He has no idea that Bruce Wayne has survived the explosion earlier. But also, it's Dick Grayson being able to go toe-to-toe with John Paul Valley. But on top of that, John Paul Valley has struggled earlier with Bruce Wayne. And so for me personally, it shows that, yeah, Dick Grayson is on John Paul Valley's level. But on top of that, John Paul has all these different gadgets and trying to use them against Dick Grayson. But Dick still knows ways to overcome those different gadgets that John Paul is using. Now, after a while, we do get to the point where you have Dick Grayson lose. Now, the only reason why he does lose this battle, quotation marks, is because you have cops arrive and you have John Paul go out of his way to attack the cops. But you have Dick Grayson get in the way of the attacks of John Paul Valley. And so, unfortunately, that right there removes Dick Grayson from the book now, because now it all comes down to John Paul fighting against Bruce Wayne. And so while you have John Paul being able to get back over to the Batcave, he thinks, okay, somebody's here. It has to be Robin, because he also believes that Batman is still dead, because again, he has no idea that Batman has survived the explosion. But he wants to go ahead and kill off Robin, except when he gets up into the manor, nah, he is confronted by Bruce Wayne, and this leads into the big battle between these two characters. So as we get into the final part of the storyline, guys, let me tell you, the opening pages of this chapter is pretty wild to me because, okay, so you have Bruce Wayne tell John Paul Valley like, hey, let's talk. And you have John Paul say, no, get out of here. Now for Bruce Wayne, you can kind of tell that in his head, he's trying his best to hold back from being like this sarcastic person, because you have John Paul saying, get out of here. But Wayne Manor is owned by Bruce Wayne. Is Bruce saying, you can't kick me out of my own house? Like, I own this place. What in the world are you talking about? But it's also John Paul saying that he is Batman. Like, Batman was his creation. But for Bruce, again, it's like, what are you talking about? Because I was the one who had created Batman. But for John Paul Valley, there's no way that Bruce would be the one to create that mantle, because Bruce Wayne is a privileged man. His father and mother's money gave him everything. There's no way that he should be able to create a mantle like Batman. Now, you do have John Paul Valley try to attack Bruce Wayne, and Bruce was able to get out of the way. But when he turned back around, he realized that John Paul Valley had gone into the Batcave. Now, the usual way that Bruce goes, he knows it's most likely booby-trapped. But you have Bruce say, don't worry, there is another way for me to get into the Batcave. And that would be the whole idea of using the entrance that Bruce had found when he was a young boy, the same one he fell into that his father had to help him get out of. But either way, it's Bruce Wayne's way of getting back into the Batcave and to hopefully find a way to bring down John Paul Valley. Now, when Bruce does arrive, he realized that he can't find John Paul anywhere. He's wondering where in the world John Paul has gone to. And you have Bruce Wayne being able to find John Paul very easily. Now, to kind of go ahead and get into the ending of the storyline, we kind of go ahead and get to the point where you have Bruce Wayne get the attention of John Paul, but goes back into the cave that he came from earlier. Now, for John Paul's bat suit, he's not really able to go deeper into the cave. And so, unfortunately for John Paul, he has to go ahead and take off most of the armor suit that he had created, except for the mask. And so once he's able to get close enough to Bruce Wayne, Bruce realized what time it is. And of course, it's now the morning. The sun is coming up. And so you have John Paul stand in the right spot where the sun is able to beam right through the cave. And when it does, it hurts John Paul's eyes. And the reason why? Because the mask, the eyes of the mask were created for the night, not created for the morning, the sun. And so for John Paul, he has no choice but to go ahead and take off the mask. And so once you have John Paul take off the mask, it's him kind of realizing that he's not Batman, that Bruce Wayne is Batman. And Bruce realized what's wrong with John Paul. It's the whole idea that he's lonely, but at the same time, it's two men who are just riding in the dark. And now it's time for them to come out of the dark. And so you have Bruce say, John Paul, go, because what you need is to figure out who you are. You have always been that person trying to be somebody else. Azrael, like your father, or Batman, like me. But what you need is to figure out who you are, your own person. And the book ends on that note right there. I'm kind of like, man, that's a good ending right there. But with that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, I'll see y'all in the next comic book video. Later.